Today's video is about cognitive dissonance, and that's a big theme we have to deal with pretty much every day in our life. It's a pretty complex mechanism. So cognitive dissonance is a tendency to rationalize or justify behavior. We can notice a disparity between our thoughts and our actions, or that something is kind of playing in the background. Now, if you work with quantum apps and intelligences, it's really useful because the app can tell you when you are in cognitive dissonance, if you programmed a few panels to become more aware of it. And I have to say it comes up all the time in different contexts and for the different beings that I'm testing as well. Cognitive dissonance is very linked to our abilities to discern when they are dormant, if you wish, like the more you denumb and reawaken your abilities, the more you are able to perceive the different frequency signatures, and you are able to go faster in getting yourself out of cognitive dissonance states, because you can trace really well what's happening within you. You can use your abilities in order to do that. And many of us, if we go back to old past handlers, for example, that had a grip on our consciousness, on our minds. And if we go back to, read their frequency signature now with all that we have awakened to, it's going to be very different what we perceive. And I also had that with the beta excretin signature. I went back to the profile of a woman who had won one of these like singing competition. It was in a French speaking one. And I remember I was probably 16 in my teenage years when her season was kind of playing. And I went back to see the footage from that time. And it was like, wow, like I didn't compute at the time how the beta excretin signature was strong. And now it was like all that I could see. And I had that with different people. I mean, now that I've worked extensively on beta excretin, I can pick up the signature way more. In all my relationships, it's like I couldn't see it maybe a year or two before, but now I can read and trace and see between the gaps and much more. So it's really great. We certainly have like a lot of corridors programmed in our minds. We have to keep on learning to know ourselves good, right? And navigate these corridors that sometimes have been programmed. It can be a little bit of a maze to navigate our own minds. And it's for sure that cognitive dissonance is about mind programming and mind control. It's about mind control being active and programming being active and needing to be broken down. It's also about different types of information colliding with each other in one moment. So it's also like a little bit of a space and time experience. And generally you break through your programming through linear time, and you can revisit that moment and kind of peel the layers of what was going on. So a lot is being done for us to be kept in a short-term reward loop in our lives, in our relationships, addicted to handlers and the kind of love bombing reward or high that we can experience there. Or savior programming is extensively used as well. It's something that's really working well here, beta excretin as well. NLC types of empathy, where you are letting yourself be encoded by the programs. In one of their famous operation in 2001, they were accessing our empathy to the max with their narratives. And that's a way actually for you to be coded to a lot of alien groups, a lot of dark things. letting your energy to be harvested in the daytime. So cognitive dissonance has a lot to do with a lack of discernment that is in the moment. But I mean, it's an ongoing process to discern, and it's like layer after layer. There will always be things that we are not able to see and perceive for the moment because of programming and layer of programming as well. So of course, the engineers of these containment systems count a lot on our naivety, on the degree of dissociation that they have programmed and created as well. So they count on that for us to be experiencing this delay between experiencing something and then being able later to accept the truth and see it for what it is. They also are counting on the way our mind is kind of overruling the body. And the mind comes with a lot of different explanation, rationalization, justification, anything to ignore the red flags, to see them and acknowledge them. The red flags that are there to really warn us. Or sometimes it's also a chance to deprogram that we are not kind of taking the opportunity off. So in this state of cognitive dissonance, we stay longer in situations that than we could. It takes time for us to break free from the mind games, the mind control. You know, it's a very complex realm here. And all the psychological operations out there are counting big time on your and my cognitive dissonance for their narratives to kind of enter our lives any way they can, really. So media works a lot with that, like triggering our cognitive dissonance all the time, telling us about a reality that truly doesn't exist and that later becomes true because the more they can get the consent of the real, the more, you know, the more pressure there is for us all. Backdrops are also there for us to be encouraged to core to all of these agendas because of the pressure, you know, and because they have them infiltrating a lot of areas that we are connecting with in our lives. So of course, these operations, they are counting on our programming to be triggered. They are counting on our programming being active, and they are counting on us staying in these denial states because it's uncomfortable maybe to be open, and because we have also a lot of programming. The more ancient maybe you are, the more sometimes there are resistance and backdoor programming that are really not so easy to kind of pierce through. So they are really counting on us going for the program that is proposed and going for the programming, you know, just settling in the trap one after the other. And that's what's designing our collective context, but also our personal lives, because there is an extreme high level of engineering in the lives of fire creation beings, of course. And it is custom made. So it's like, you know, a trigger is really going to be custom made for you, with the effect it's going to have on you, how it's going to make you feel, how it's going to target your self-esteem. I may read the same comment and it wouldn't have the same effect on me, but another type of comment would work. And it's really the intent when you feel it's directed to you with a evil intent, or, you know, it helps a lot to remember also who is sending you these triggers. A lot of time they are not fire creation beings, and they are really puppeted. So as soon as you realize and, you know, give credit to what you perceive in their signature or their anger, their repression, and all of that, you know, their words doesn't really have any kind of quality. So cognitive dissonance is also linked to gaslighting. I have a few videos about that here. And I already shared that we are gaslighting others when we are kind of telling them about a reality we really believe in that is actually not true. And if you reread yourself, if you take notes about your experience here, and then you reread yourself 1-2 years later, you can see how much you were in cognitive dissonance about a lot of things in your life. So you can imagine that you are in cognitive dissonance right now about a lot of things in your life as well. I have different examples about this kind of dynamics playing a role in my life. Some are anecdotes. You know, really in the subtlety of what was really going on in a moment. You know, when I kind of was holding to a reality I was believing in that moment, and the other person was like bringing a sort of new type of information, and also kind of explaining what kind of impact something had on them. And I was listening, but I was not fully giving 100% credit to that person, where if I did in that moment, I could have used that moment to slowly get me out of something that I was believing in that wasn't true. It just came later at my own pace. And then you kind of can revisit the moment as well. Sometimes it could take you 1 year, 2 years to realize. You know, it's also because programming takes time to break down, to open up. Sometimes it's because there is a painful reality hiding behind that you really don't want to deal with. And of course, there is tons of programming and tons of things we have forgotten. So we don't even know that they are possible. So that's how we read reality with what we know, but there is so much, you know, that has been forgotten and that needs to be remembered. So cognitive dissonance, gaslighting, being gaslit, are constant states we are in at different degrees. It's there in our lives. Cognitive dissonance is also a way to really rationalize with the mind, with the logic, instead of using your clear abilities that are more sensing, feeling, to really navigate your daytime reality. And when you do that, you are also rejecting a part of information that is presented to you, especially if it's a spirited ally. You know, it's great to listen to them because with their connection to source, they can really bring new perspective and help you to get outside some of your blind spots. It's sure part of the spiritual bypassing here. And you know, you are often in cognitive dissonance when you are around handlers, when you are not seeing them for who they are. You are kind of buying into the mirror image that the simulation really wants you to believe in. And we are often finding justifications for the way beings behave. It doesn't have to be blatant handlers. It can be your pets, it can be your children, it can be any one of your entourage. But, you know, noticing, for example, if they are accessed by AI, if they are used for interferences, Are we finding excuses for that, for the way our boundaries are being crossed? There is a tendency to rationalize, that is for sure. Now, cognitive dissonance becomes a problem when a collaborator or a close friend is really in that state of denial, and it has direct consequence on your life. You might experience a trigger coming from them if you try to go directly in the core of the discussion. So that might not always be the best avenue. Sometimes, extremely old beings, they kind of can be stubborn, and we are really the one choosing in which order we deprogram, and this cannot be forced on anybody. So when this happens in a relationship, it is a little bit of an uncertainty area, right? So being in a cognitive dissonance state, it's about missing part of the information that is present directly around you that you could use right now if you were open to it. Now you might be partially open to it, but not totally, that you really kind of click and get outside your state of cognitive dissonance and piece everything together. Now, on another note, you find a lot of false realities interpreted by the non-spirited constantly. They tell you reality is a certain way, and it's always kind of a half truth. They interpreted thing a certain way, like they're gonna tell you the reality is like this, but for example, if they're talking about someone the person is not doing the thing that they are saying the person is doing, and that they have like a biased kind of interpretation. So it's really interesting to notice that. It can take you a while to open your eyes about what's really going on in your reality. There are so many details and parts in our lives. There is always work. There are always a lot of things going on in our lives. Cognitive dissonance can be about not seeing the darkness in someone, because you see the light and you see that person under a certain angle. And when you learn more, when you piece the pieces of the puzzle together, now you can finally see the darkness that you were not reading a day before, and you can kind of reread everything, and it suddenly makes a lot more sense. It's because you're reading incomplete information. You're not reading the whole signature. You're only reading part of it, and you're also projecting of yourself in the signature, which is making it more difficult for you to read the true whole signature that is just in front of you. Now, it is also a problem when you are convinced by someone that they have more figured out than they actually have. You can be triggered by their reactions if they stay in denial as you are trying to present them with a new piece of information. But you can do yourself a favor if you acknowledge their weaknesses that you have observed, and if you don't dismiss these things that you know to be true, and if you trust more in your discernment, and if you give credit to all that you perceive, no matter what the other person is telling you. That's gonna help a lot to diminish the triggering with our loved ones, because it's so easy to get caught into the field of somebody else, and especially if it's people you respect and you prize also their abilities and you recognize their talents. This relationship can cause very specific triggering as well. Now, all programs are distraction, and here it's the distraction game. And of course, a lot of their distractions here, a lot of the distraction here are leading us to suffering. Now, also with our family member, it can take a little bit of time before we break through. We have breakthrough, and before we break through our false and cover memories about our childhood and what was really going on. And sometimes it takes years before you have bleed through, and you start to reread reality. Of course, you wanted to believe in the stories because the truth is not so pretty, and you have to remap, and of course also rewire, recalibrate your whole reality as soon as you leave the state of cognitive dissonance, which is a good thing. What do you do when you're not able to be in denial anymore? Do you take action, or do you put it aside, right? And what do you do with that information? And how quick are you going to use it? How quick are you going to do something about it? How quick are you going to take distance with beings that are not who you thought they were? Now, sometimes with handlers, you might see some things on social media or in what they express that don't really match the image that they want you to have of them. So you're in a state of cognitive dissonance because you're seeing two things. You're seeing different parts of them, right? Don't dismiss that. This is precious information telling you about really underground programming. Now, a very obvious and something you cannot ignore, that's going to tell you that you are in full cognitive dissonance is urinary tract infection, right? That's going to tell you you are in complete denial about what you are experiencing, and your territory is being completely invaded, right? It can be triggered by romantical relationships. It's a way of your spirit to talk to you through your body avatar, telling you, get the hell out of there. It's not good for you. Now, of course, denial is a protective mechanism. It's programmed and then reinforced by the programs, the MK Ultra programs. There is also a lot that is based on a vague memory of who we are. So we have this kind of knowing. We don't give a lot of credit to it in general, but the programs are using that to create that spiritual ego. That is something that all brilliant, smart, ancient, old, powerful beings have to deal with. You know many things, and it's true, but there are so many things that you don't know, and it helps to be humble and to be open also to the gifts from other fire creation beings and how they can influence your life with their also forever eternal connection to source. So there is a lot we have forgotten, and sometimes it's good to say what if and be a little bit in that newbie kind of shoes. So cognitive dissonance is a process of deep entanglement with the complexity of our inner structures in our own minds. It's counting on our core beliefs, on our programming that can be very, very strong, especially savior programming, for example. It's generally like a whole body trigger. And there are a lot of corridors that are there to protect kind of core material within our own softwares. And also some places within us are also handled by alters, and it is making everything a little bit more complicated to disentangle and integrate. Now, there is often a delay between the moment you are breaking through your false memories. It can take a few days, a few months, a few weeks. You are revisiting your past. You are kind of piecing everything together beyond the veil of appearances, beyond the veil of what your cover and false memories had been building in your own mind. You know, it was based on a false impression that you had about something that was happening. But slowly you start to be able to access the knowing and the connection to what was hiding in the background, and that was left there unacknowledged, and that was not what the program wanted you to believe in. And this is the realm we live in, with a lot of handlers disguising themselves as our helpers. They are themselves in a lot of denial, in a lot of cognitive dissonance. They are themselves not seeing reality as it is, but as they have been programmed to see it. So there is a lot of work, but that work is really fascinating and amazing, and taking the time to reintegrate and revisit all these moments, and keeping on being observant, because the more we do that, the quicker we can realize how these moments are playing in our now reality right now, and we can catch the gaps between everything that's happening, where a lot is hiding in these gaps. That's what's really fascinating to observe and catch. It's like you're slowing time down, like you're catching, you know, things between space and time, in energy, in frequency signatures. You are reading it, and it can save you a lot of time for the present, for the future. The more you have become aware of your cognitive dissonance, the quicker you can work with it in the now, and the quicker you can also recognize it in others, and being less triggered by others being in these states, you know, holding on to their captivity, you know, resisting help so much. There is so much resistance to help. There is huge programming for us to be resistant to help. Of course, that's a brilliant backdoor programming. You know, one of the first things you have to start dismantle inside, so you can start to break down your programming. So this is really fascinating to be learning that, to become more aware of everything that's going on in every exchange we are having with everybody, whether they are spirited, non-spirited, halfway through, you know, whether they are your pets, your children, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your siblings, you know, your loved ones, your partners, all of that. There is a lot of work for us to study the gaps in everything we experience, and work with that.